All right, welcome to another one from the Outdoor Analyst. I've got a super fun one for you today. And today we're going to be talking about, well, I think bushcraft and maybe ways we have taken it, maybe ways it should go. Just kind of, I want to see, have we defined bushcraft incorrectly and do we need to make a change? But before we dive in, hey, if you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button, I really would appreciate that. I'm a small channel and every subscribe really does help. Hit the like, leave some comments on this below. I know it's going to be a topic that just goes everywhere, but let's dive into it. Essentially, I think we have defined bushcraft completely differently than the way people defined it, like Horace Kephart, George Sears, the guys that gave us, Nesmik and the Kephart design. Those guys had a whole different philosophy about what bushcraft is. And nowadays, in the last 10 years, bushcraft has literally turned into two things in my mind: carving, feather sticking. Like, that's pretty much it. Maybe throw batoning in there too, but I think we've completely changed the meaning of the word to, hey, if you're doing bushcraft, that means all you're actually doing is carving, maybe making traps, but most likely you're just making feather sticks, doing some notches for stakes, batoning wood and calling it. And I think that's pretty much what almost all knives that are in the bushcraft realm are now kind of perceived as. And a lot of them go that way. I think that's why we created, like, we have this huge push for Scandis, is because Scandis are really great. This is an LT Wright Outback, CPM 3V, 0.13 thick on the spine. Beautiful knife, absolutely beautiful woodworking knife. It is incredible for feather sticking. It is incredible for notching, doing traps, because it's a Scandi. It dives right into wood. It's fantastic. Where do I kind of leave this knife at? I leave it as a woodworking knife. And that kind of makes me wonder if we should start working on, like, the nomenclature, just changing how we actually talk about these knives, because I think this really is an excellent premium woodworking knife. But I think that's where it really is. Like, can you do other things with it? Absolutely. Would I want to process food or game with this knife? The answer is no. It's a very thin Scandi on a fairly chunky edge, so it wedges everything out. It does not cut skin very well. If you've ever done Scandis on animals, they just suck. It really does suck in comparison. It's not even close. But I love this knife. I absolutely do. I think for woodworking, for making fires, and for just general camp firework, it's awesome. It's really, really awesome. But I think we may have missed the mark, if you want me to be honest. Yeah, I'll leave this out here just kind of as a reference for what we call bushcraft nowadays. This is a bushcraft knife. Like, without a doubt, anybody says bushcraft and they're kind of into the game, most of them are going to say LT Wright. And I like the Outback personally. Most people will say the Genesis. I would love to have a Scandi Genesis. I'm not going to lie. I would like a nice one. But it hasn't happened yet. Now, I think bushcraft needs to honestly almost go back to the terms and mean what it used to mean when we were talking about Sears with his Nesmik style and Horace Kephart. Both those guys, they really harped on skills versus tools. And a matter of fact, I think they were the creators of the ultralight packing system, if you want me to be honest with you. These guys really tried to narrow it down. And let's see, Sears, his whole role was essentially you should have two knives and a belt axe or a tomahawk. His thought process was he created the Nesmik essentially. I think in his mind it's about a 5-inch blade meant for essentially food processing and game processing. And that was the whole point of this knife. This is an AA Forge Nesmik in 52-100. It is absolutely gorgeous. This thing comes down to an incredibly slicey edge. But as you can see, it kind of comes down to a nice convex, but it's almost like a Scandi Vex. It is a saber, but it's halfway up here. So it does get thin, but it allows it to do a lot of things. This would be kind of like Nesmik's main belt knife, but his philosophy was you should also have a whittler. So let's call this like the AA Forge Traveler. He would have a little whittling knife for woodwork stuff, something smaller, something you could do real little things, make your tools and stuff out of. That's kind of what he was rolling with. So this would be his setup, and he would throw like a tomahawk or a small belt hatchet. And that's what he would do wood processing with. that was the philosophy. And I think the knife philosophy was interesting because I don't think there were Scandis back then rocking them back in our bushcraft days, because a bushcraft knife was actually meant to do a lot of different things. It was a lot of different tasks. You didn't just go out and do nothing but woodwork. A lot of it was animal processing, game processing, food processing being huge, and then little whittling. I think Sears knew what he was doing when he did this stuff. I like his two belt system with a hatchet or a tomahawk for wood processing. I think that was brilliant. He was also kind of the guy who's like more along the lines of, you don't need as many backup tools as you think. And then we have Kephart. Horace Kephart over here, who was, he was, have a belt knife, 4 inches, 5 inches or so. That's the Kephart design, essentially. Have an axe, and that was the main thing for him. Like, that was, that's all you need to kind of handle it. Now, I think he was also running with a small hatchet as well in his mind with stuff. So they went lightweight. They went simple. And yet again, this is kind of the same sort of grind as that Nesmic on here, but it is nice convex down here. Really beautiful, beautiful, I guess I'll call it a Saber Vex, really. Gets down nice and thin. This is just a beautiful AA Forge Kephart. That man I love his work. Really is ergonomic stuff. Simplicity done incredibly, incredibly well. But the philosophy of this is I would absolutely rather have this style of knife over a Scandi, to be honest with you. If we're talking about, in my mind, bushcraft, where you're surviving in nature, you're becoming kind of one with nature, you're actually using your skills versus just feather sticking. And I think you do need a little more versatility on your tools to do that. So I feel like we should almost have like a switch between, this is bushcraft, this is woodcraft. And I think that's fine. I think it's fine to have a separation out there like that. Like even like this little knife. This would be kind of like Sears's little crafter. And you know what? I would have my little crafter probably be a little Scandi. This is a Winger. This is the Winger crafter. But essentially, this thing's excellent. It's perfect for whittling. Perfect for whittling wood. And it's a thin enough Scandi because it's like 0.9 thick, I think. This thing is ridiculous for doing all little tasks for like EDC work too. So yes, you can kind of get away with it in the Scandi if you go super, super thin, but not everything do you want to go super thin with. Really little knives like this, excellent. But I feel like we should kind of separate things out these days as, hey, we have woodworking knives, we have bushcraft knives, and bushcraft is a little more middle of the road. I wouldn't consider bushcraft to be a Scandi edge. Matter of fact, I wouldn't put one in there at all. Now, am I actually going to change my nomenclature and just try and push the whole market that way? No, I'm a small channel. But I feel like we should. I feel like at some point, it's just got to give where people realize you're just woodworking. That's really all you're doing with the Scandi. Please just call it that. It's not really bushcraft. Bushcraft is everything. I mean, you got to field dress. You got to food prep. You got to do all of your actual utility tasks. And I do think a regular convex or not Scandivex, just a convex edge or a V edge is most likely going to do better in almost all those tasks than a Scandi, except for your woodworking tasks. So I know we have options. I love that we have options. I just feel like maybe we should change the way we're talking about stuff. Of course, in this day and age, no one's actually going to get out and live and do things in the woods. If we have people that even hunt, it's kind of a miracle these days. So it's a whole generation that's kicking up next. So maybe this is the version of bushcraft because that's the most they'll actually ever do in the future. But I hope not. I hope we get back into bushcraft is a do-all mindset. It is a do-all everything. You need it to be very versatile versus, hey, you're a bushcrafter, let's just go make a fire in the back. And there's nothing wrong with that. Please don't anybody like hit the comments like, why are you dissing on those guys? That's me. I love making fires out back. It's something I do all the time. But I also use blades for the property, just maintaining trails, maintaining all of our deer stands, which is super important for the season that we're in right now. So there's a lot of tasks that you can do. And then, yeah, obviously field dressing and all that. So yes, I like the bushcraft term the way it was 150 years ago. I think that's where it should be. I think this needs to basically just be called woodcrafting, woodworking, knives, and that's about it. I would love for that switch to happen, because I don't know when it really hit. Maybe it was the early 2000s when bushcraft just became, hey, if you can go make a fire and a notch with a knife, you need a Scandi, and that's it. It just somehow it flipped and switched and became more simple. And yeah, I don't know. I just wish it wasn't. I wish that we kind of went back to the olden days where it meant a whole lot more than it does. And I feel like, things like Georgia Bushcraft, where they have everybody going down and actually learning skills. I feel like they are moving that way. Like, we're getting back to the idea of bushcraft is skills work. It's not just a Scandi. So maybe there's hope. Maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel. Any other reviewers out there too? Like, let me know what you think. Like, should we try to make that separation again, where bushcraft means something, not just fire prep? Let me know. I'm interested. I was just thinking about that this morning. I was like, those guys would roll in their grave if they just thought this was the answer for everything for bushcraft. They'd lose their minds, and they'd also have 1,000 answers right off the bat of why that's not true. So I feel like Sears and Cap Art were just right, and we've just kind of screwed it up over the years. But let me know down below. I'll catch you on the next one.